I know my words yesterday whenever I was covering the press conference where that I was going to take the day off today, but there was a topic that I didn't touch on during the press conference video that I was planning on either going all in on or just kind of prodding at through the discussion that I made yesterday. And I omitted it from the discussion because it just pissed me off so much, dude. This video is going to be about how we need to free Ilia Topuria and how Dana White and Hunter Campbell are absolutely tweaking right now. And how if Islam Makachev versus Ilia Topuria never takes place, we really need to acknowledge that MMA has leadership issues. The UFC has leadership issues. And boxing may actually be better than our sport. So I want to talk about what was discussed, this Mexican standoff at featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight. Dana White said that Islam is either going to fight Ilia if Belal wins, or a challenge for his own second belt if JDM beats Belal. So what we have is an experience where Islam Makachev is being treated as the main character, and the fate of his career is going to be decided by this matchup taking place on Saturday. But the implications of whoever wins or loses this fight is basically what I want to discuss, because it's not fair to Ilia Topuria for him to just be kind of left on the back burner depending on whether or not Belal wins or loses this Saturday. There isn't really much of a storyline to make JDM versus Islam a fight other than Belal is Islam's boy and he'd be avenging this loss, so I guess that would be kind of cool. But Ilia has been calling for a fight with Islam and proved that he deserves to get this matchup based off of the work that he did in featherweight. We have Ilia Topuria, who's coming off of back-to-back wins from GOATs. God forbid Islam goes up and he fights Jack Della Maddalena and he gets knocked out by Jack Della Maddalena. If they still host this fight, there's going to be significantly less hype around the matchup post Islam getting knocked out by JDM. The fact that they're both on crazy win streaks in the UFC is what makes this fight a fight. So we're jeopardizing that if you're going to have Islam then go up to welterweight and challenge. Knocking out Max Holloway and Volkanovski back-to-back like Ilia has, that's the most impressive feat out of any of the three champions or immediate contenders for these belts. So if anyone should be having their appointment for the belt dictated by any type of title happening, it should be Ilia. There should be no question as to what he's going to do. They should have already announced Islam Makachev versus Ilia Topuria for UFC 317 as soon as we lost Dricus du Plessis versus Hamzat, or rebook the fight. Do something, man. Ilia Topuria, they've just been punishing him, it feels like. Islam's win over Charles in the second Volk fight could be considered close seconds to the achievements of Ilia Topuria, but since Ilia Topuria has the best clips, they should be treating his desires more seriously than anyone else's out of the three champions, especially if JDM just becomes champ. Why are they then pushing Islam to fight this guy who just got the belt, instead of letting him fight his contenders? I will never forgive Dana White for letting this fight get away if it doesn't happen. Ultimately, Dana saying that what Islam does next depends on the outcome of UFC 315's main event makes it so that I can't appreciate this fight in a vacuum, because the whole time I'm just going to be too focused on the implications of this fight's outcome. I'm going to watch Belal get knocked out by JDM if that does happen, and I'm going to be like, oh my god, wow! And then I'm going to be like, wow, the UFC is absolutely over now, because we're not getting Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makachev. Islam Makachev is going to fight JDM and maybe get sparked out cold. It makes it so that even though I've picked JDM, I'm low-key just rooting for Belal to win this fight now, because I know that that's the way that it's supposed to happen in Islam's mind in order for him to fight Ilia Topuria. Potentially, they have planned for Ilia Topuria to fight Islam Makachev at International Fight Week, and then they'll book this fight later on. But enough with the suspense already, dude. It looks like a mess right now, and that nobody has anything figured out. It looks like the UFC is holding Ilia Topuria for ransom because they have a global superstar who is ready to perform, and he can't get any fight at lightweight. They can market Topuria better than O'Malley, and yet they don't let him fight and become greater. But they'll give O'Malley infinite title rematches, and this guy can't even fight for a belt that he's actually earned, and he's given up his own belt to fight for. They're just letting Ilia Topuria's prime expire on the sidelines, and they're giving his potential opponents like Islam Makachev opportunities to lose and ruin the hype for this fight. Things are perfect right now for this matchup to happen tomorrow. So if you wait 6 more months, or God forbid like 8, and then Islam gets a fight in between, we may not be looking at the same matchup on paper than we are right now. We are actually in hell. If Belal loses this weekend, Islam fights JDM, and he gets knocked out challenging for the 170-pound title. If these things happen, the UFC is over. It's done. This cheapens the Topuria victory over Islam if he is knocked out in their fight, because if he gets slept again, people will just say the same thing that they did about Volkanovski after Islam had knocked him out before. They'll be like, oh yeah, JDM softened Islam up for Ilia, and he just got the easy work. and JDM did all the heavy lifting, because they'd probably have a war, and if Islam did get knocked out, people would definitely lean on excuses in order to invalidate Ilia Topuria's win over him. I can't stop harping on it. The fact that they haven't booked Islam versus Topuria for International Fight Week is painfully stupid. It should be their fight that determines whether or not Islam goes up to challenge for 170. And that's what we should be on target for expecting right now. We should be expecting Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makachev. If Makachev wins that fight, then he goes and avenges JDM. And he already has his hands full between Ilia Topuria or contenders like Arman, who was even supposed to fight again and never has. And he feels like now he doesn't have an actual contender, even though he was just down to fight that guy. And now he wants to go and challenge up to another weight class. JDM, though, is the real guy who's getting shafted by the promotion right now. The worst outcome for our viewership as fans and the promotion is now attached to him winning this fight by the brutal knockout that I predicted. And that would just light the fire under Islam so that he couldn't forego going up to challenge JDM. If Belal gets knocked out like I'm predicting that it will happen, that's going to spur this fight taking place as soon as it can get scheduled on the part of Islam, and he's not going to want to fight Ilia Topuria. And I think this is super unfair that I can no longer be excited about the way that I predicted this fight will go, because it fries the entire UFC. JDM versus Islam is not even a top 3 title fight that you could make at welterweight with all the different contenders in the division. Buckley, Shavkat, Brady, Gary, they all have more interesting fights with JDM than Islam Makachev would. On paper, in my opinion, because they're actual welterweights. This is just a circus match. Makachev versus Topuria makes a lot of sense. And Makachev versus Topuria and Jones versus Aspinall are the best fights that the UFC can make right now. They're finessing Jack out of getting to enjoy the moment of becoming champion if they have Islam just come into the cage immediately and face off with him right there. The reason why Ilia versus Islam makes sense is because they have both fought and won against many contenders in their divisions. JDM just got back from an injury and would be doing the impossible beating Belal after a 2-year layoff. He wouldn't have defended his belt at all. The UFC would be so wrong for trying to make JDM into a pawn in Islam's game during his moment and taking that from him. I don't agree with any of the things that are going on right now. I think that there's a lot of things that they're not telling us, and this could just be like the setup for some big reveal that they've already made Islam versus Ilia Topuria, and that was the plan, that he will fight the 145 champion who vacated, and then if he wins that fight, Islam Makachev will then go up to 170 to challenge JDM. This is the way that it should be, and the outcome of whether or not I am into the UFC or not in the coming month should not be attached to an inconsequential performance by a guy who is doing the best he can to become champion for the first time. The implications of him succeeding should not be this dark for us to consider, and morbid, quite frankly, because dude, that's gonna suck. Islam couldn't be number 1 pound for pound if he got knocked out. And then what would that make Jack Della Maddalena the number 1 pound for pound fighter? He's a 170 pounder who beat up a lightweight, and this would be like, sure, Islam is a weight bully, but there is going to be a stark size difference here, and it's going to favor JDM. I don't understand what the point of any of this is. Why are we doing this? It's really frustrating. I'm still just going to watch the fights and appreciate them for what's going on, but I don't like how smug Dana is being about this whole thing. I get that Islam Makachev has done a lot in the sport, and we should be listening and hearing him out as far as what his plans for his career are and what he wants out of the UFC, and they should be honoring a lot of his wishes, but it's not all about that guy. And it might be some of the, Khabib lineage stuff that gets him favor over other guys, but listen, man, I can speak for probably 90% of us whenever I say we want Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makachev, and we want it like right now, bro. Like, we want it. We want that fight. We want to see that fight in 2025. It should happen. There's no reason why it doesn't. And we're getting closer and closer to International Fight Week. They're not just going to put this together as some short notice announcement, I don't think, at least. So, granted, they are planning on giving us months of anticipation. When can we reasonably expect this fight? Especially if we know that Islam is targeting the 170 belt, if JDM does win this weekend. It just cheapens the whole thing, man. And it's just because Dana White opened his big mouth. So yeah, I'm kind of sick to my stomach over this, dude. Good fights that we want to see as fans shouldn't be held on conditions, bro. That's so lame. But the last thing that I want to talk about is Aldo versus Zahabi, new developments in this fight. We're going to have to end up old yellering Jose Aldo since he doesn't want to retire and his body can't make bantamweight anymore. This fight is happening at featherweight. I'm in Zahabi versus Jose Aldo. Aldo tipped the scales this morning at 143 pounds. I really hate whenever veterans who are ex-champions settle for this as a resolution to their career. Missing weight like this is amateur, dude. And whenever it's an upcoming fighter who hasn't been in the UFC that much, we heavily criticize them for making weight. Because we feel like, okay, if you're going to be in this organization, you're going to sign onto the contracts and do the training camps, part of this is making the weight. So what, are you just some type of rookie who can't do it and fill your end of the bid? And this is very unbecoming of a fighter who's been champion for as long as Jose Aldo has. This definitely has a good chance of being a slaughter now, where Jose is looking like, you know, the old Jose Aldo instead of the old Jose Aldo, you know? So I hope that this is the last time that he fights. If he loses badly, look at the state of him. And he always looks very dehydrated at weight cuts at bantamweight, but this is probably the worst he's looked on the scales, and he was closer to the featherweight weight limit than he was the bantamweight one this time, so there's nothing really to figure out as far as this goes. I think he loses to Zahabi, and he should call it a career afterwards, because what is he even still doing here? Make sure you guys are watching UFC 315 tomorrow. I am so excited for this card, dude. I will catch you guys in a recap upload after the event. Have a wonderful day. I will see you in the next one.